It's really great to be here. Hey, Don, how are you doing? It's great to see so many familiar faces, and we're going to just take a few minutes and tell you all a little bit about sort of what happened on March 20th and leading up to it, and what, as Bill said, what that means for us here in this room, and for those of us who believe that a more progressive type of politics is not only possible, but what we deserve here in Chicago. So we're going to talk about that for a minute and certainly leave some time to take questions from you guys about whatever subjects you might want to talk about. But I want to briefly pick up on something that Bill said a minute ago, talking about the anti-austerity program. That the purpose of getting behind this petition to submit it to the governor was to change the conversation, right? To change the conversation from one about austerity and cuts to one about a more progressive form of economic policy. And I think that changing the conversation is a very appropriate theme for what we're going to talk about here tonight. Because when I first came before this organization, I guess probably it was the September or October meeting. I have to check the minutes. It was, I think, the second time that I'd ever given a political speech. You guys might have noticed it was a little rough around the edges, perhaps. But I was a journalist who had left his job at the Huffington Post in Chicago to run against one of the sort of emblematic machine political figures in Chicago. And I think that even those who supported me completely, like you guys did, probably didn't think I stood a snowball's chance in hell come the election time. That I was fighting the good fight, and we'll see how far he gets. And as Bill said, on March 20th, we got over 4,000 votes. We came just 125 votes shy of victory. We got 49.2% of the vote in the district. It was an incredibly competitive race, a race in which my opponent spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, in which the Speaker of the House was extremely active on my opponent's behalf. The mayor sent a letter to everyone in the district. President Preckwinkle sent a letter to everyone in the district. The governor sent people to work for my opponent. I mean, the entire political establishment was lined up against us, and I think the result that we turned in is one that we all should be proud of. Thank you, guys. Thank you. So I'm going to let Rebecca talk a little bit about how we got there, and then I'm going to say just a few words at the end about what that means, what the result means for us going forward, for us individually and for the movement as a whole. So I'll let Rebecca take it away for a minute.
So what I'll tell you guys a little bit about is kind of the way that we approached running this campaign and the elements that we think can transfer to any campaign, be it candidacy for office or an issue-based campaign. And so campaigns at their core are not that complicated, which sounds kind of weird. I understand it seems like a complicated thing because, we really aren't taught much about our political system, about how electoral politics works. So it seems like this dark thing that only a certain group of professional people can do because they know how it works. But really a campaign comes down to some really basic things. It comes down to writing out a plan for how you're going to win. And that plan is going to include a message, the reason that you're pushing this issue or why this candidate is the one to elect, and sticking to that message. So having a clarity in the vision for what you're doing, something that you think is clear, can be explained in a concise manner, and is something you and the people that you're working alongside of and the electorate are passionate about. So you've got to have a really good message going out there. Another element is just the, at all costs, getting out and talking to more and more people. There was just never a day, really, for months on end, that we didn't go out. Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, Christmas Day. There are opportunities to speak with people everywhere and all the time. I'm notorious for trying to speed up meetings because every meeting that you're in is a moment when you're not talking to somebody new.
Lightning quick story. I knocked on a guy's door on Super Bowl Sunday about 2 hours before kickoff, and he was he was suspicious at first what I was doing there, but ultimately impressed by my dedication of being out there. I told him at kickoff I was going to stop knocking on doors. He ended up being a good friend and a supporter of the campaign. So just goes to show you, like Rebecca said, never a day off.
Even on the Super Bowl,
on Super Bowl Sunday,
you can get supporters.
Knock up till the
Holy
till
wow.
kickoff.
So going out there, never missing an opportunity to talk with more and more people and doing it right there at their homes. And the last thing is just looking for opportunities for efficiencies, which I know seems really weird, but I think a lot of the time a little bit of planning can result in just that much more accomplished in that day. Something that I always make sure to value whenever someone walks in my door to volunteer for this campaign or his campaign or a single payer event is that their time is used well, and that I've planned out how that person, when they come in, are going to be able to feel and leave like they feel that they had accomplished something, and that we gave them every tool available to feel successful and to be successful. And so, I see a lot of the time folks are running these campaigns, they haven't kind of planned out what are the most basic and important things. And those things are using your volunteers' times well, planning out, making a plan and following it, having a message that's consistent across the board, and then at the end of the day, just never stop talking to new people and always be out there. That's kind of the cornerstones of the campaign, things that I end up reiterating over and over again, and I think that applies to everything that we do here with Progressive Democrat in America and all the issues that we work on.
Absolutely. And I think, it can't be stressed enough the value of the individual conversations that we had with people throughout the campaign. And if there's one concise answer to how did we get the result that we got, it was we just talked to more people. We had thousands of conversations with thousands of voters throughout the course of 7 months. We were knocking on doors all the time, myself, our wonderful dedicated volunteers, and in a time when people are rightfully cynical about politics, when people feel justifiably that their elected leaders are more beholden to the dollars that back them than to the constituents they're supposed to serve, right? And it's, I guess, piggybacks on Don's comment before about how to get things moved. But I think it really means something for people to see their a candidate for public office show up at their doorstep and take the time to talk with them about the issues that matter. Or to see a volunteer, someone like you all coming to their door and say, look, it's my Saturday. I could be spending time with my family. I could be pursuing whatever I could be pursuing. But instead, I'm here on behalf of this candidate because I really trust this person and I believe they're going to fight for us. Those kinds of conversations go a tremendous way, not only in terms of bringing support to a campaign, but in terms of bringing back people's trust in the process. And I think going forward, that's what we have to continue to work on. I mean, one thing that Rebecca and I sort of are disappointed about, as I'm sure so many of us are, was the turnout in the election. In our race, it was 19% of registered voters came out and voted. And we always hear, well, we should move the primaries to June because the weather is so much nicer and people will come out and vote. But I don't know if you all remember, March 20th was sunny and 80 degrees, right? It was a beautiful day, and 19%. But I think that's on us. That's on those of us who really believe in the process because I tell you what, the machine loves low turnout. Joe Berrios, as we mentioned, is the chairman of the Democratic Party. He's also the 31st Ward Committeeman. And you would think as Ward Committeeman, his job would be, really get those votes out. He would have a really high turnout ward because he's been the committeeman there for 20 some odd years, and my goodness, as a committeeman, your job is to really get that vote out. Consistently, the 31st ward is one of the lowest turnout wards in the city of Chicago. It's because the machine has their people in their pocket, and they want to get them out and nobody else. For those of us who believe in a better process, it's incumbent on us to inspire our neighbors to believe as well, to believe that their vote really can matter. And I think when you look at our election and you see that the differential was 125 votes, I mean, that's 2 people in every precinct who decided to stay home that day, could have swung the outcome of the election. So a result like this, I think, it, enables us to carry that message forward and to really deliver it with some conviction. To say to our neighbors, yes, your vote matters. Look at how close this was. If you take your vote seriously, we can bring about meaningful change to the system. And the last thing I'll say before we open it up to questions is my hope for the outcome of this election is that people around the city who are represented by leaders who are apathetic or uninvolved or beholden to corporations or part of the political machine will feel a little less disempowered. Will feel a little bit more like those leaders are not invulnerable. Those machines are not unbeatable. That if we work in our neighborhoods, if we are dedicated to our convictions, we can rally around meaningful change, and we can truly rattle the cage. We can truly shake the foundation of this political machine, because it really is not. It is not all that we sort of imagine it to be. It's vulnerable, and if we organize and if we fight hard, we are going to be able to break it, and we're going to be able to change the way that politics works in this city for a long time to come. So I think it's a really exciting opportunity for us moving forward, and we're going to keep working. We're going to keep staying organized in the neighborhood. We're going to keep fighting for the issues that matter to the progressive community. I mean, none of the concerns that we talked about on the campaign, whether it's better public education or safer communities or progressive economic reforms, these issues have not gone away. Foreclosures are still a problem. Our public schools are still a problem. The economy is still really hurting folks. Just because election season is over and our elected officials are going back to their plush offices in Springfield does not mean that these problems have been solved. So we have to continue working. That's my plan individually. I know that's our plan sort of as a movement, as a group. And with that, I'd like to open the floor up to questions. But thank you guys for your time.
Trying to think of the right sarcastic answer for this.
Well, not campaigning for 10 years. I think that was
10 years of misrepresentation will do it.
Right.
It wasn't hard to persuade people when you got to those doors that we needed new leadership and direction in Springfield. I think the one thing that I always become very aware of, acutely aware of when I'm back to door knocking for whatever political campaign or issue campaign, is that the public is really on our side. It's not so much that people don't believe that all of this common sense, widely supported public policy to be passed. It's simply a matter that, I mean, folks are really cynical. There's 2 things. One, they mostly agree with a lot of the basic changes that we're asking for, but 2, they feel deeply cynical about the state of affairs. And getting over that cynicism, that is actually, I think, more often the challenge, is that not so much that they don't believe these are good policies, but that they don't believe the political system even works anymore, and I just can't vote anymore. It just doesn't seem like it makes a difference.
And I'll say this, I just want to give a little bit more of a detailed answer to that question, because it's an interesting one. I'd like to say that we got our results simply because of how fantastic our campaign was, and that was it. But I do think that if my opponent had knocked on doors for 4 or 5 hours a day and talked to 8,000 voters the way we did, it wouldn't have been nearly as close. And in particular, if my opponent had legislated in a way that really fought for the community for 10 years and then could knock on your door and say, hey, here's what I've done for you, I think that there would be little room for a challenger, especially for a challenger to come as close as we did. I think also the negative campaigning that my opponent did was really ultimately backfired in a lot of ways. I think that it was, I wish I had the mailers here because they're fun props. They're there were dozens of them. These goofy negative mailers, photoshopped and with silly comments on it, and all this made
raining
up stuff.
money over
Yeah,
Will Guzzardi.
Right. Yeah, right. They called me Wall Street Will, which I think to anyone in this room is certainly entertaining. Anyway, so I hope that answers it a little bit. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
What is it that we have to do to get them to actually go and vote?
Wow. Yeah, the question is, what is it that we have to do to get people to actually go out and vote? How can we get the turnout up?
I mean, I would say there's a couple different things, and I'll try not to make this long, though I have a habit when I talk about civic participation to get a little long-winded. When I look in Illinois about ways in which people have the opportunity to register to vote, I see very few times when people are really being proposed to register to vote. You've got the DMV, the only time they'll ever be asked to register to vote, right? And then you've got maybe the library might have a few out. But, you know, civic participation is something that is ebb and flow, right? It happens and campaigns happens and then it stops. I think that's really problematic. I think that civic participation needs to have continuity between elections, that we need to always be registering people to vote. And I want voter registration drives. My vision here is that voter registration drives, they happen at our concerts, at our festivals, they happen in our bars and in our communities. We need more engagement that is authentic and sincere. And in Chicago, we haven't had that. It's been you know, this political system that people feel is impermeable. They can't get into it. And the political system doesn't want any changes. So, but by no means do they want to introduce new voters into it. And so that's my thought.
It's even the registered voters.
Right, that's true. And so let me, yeah.
Those are the ones that I'm wondering.
Absolutely. So your point is that, right, even among registered voters, only 20% of them came out. Right.
Need to register more people.
Sure.
But
Right.
it's a culture of participation
Exactly.
is
And-
what it is that we're not just doing it on a seasonal
And
basis.
right. I think that's really the important bit, is that when we come to people's doors, I mean, one thing that I heard unfortunately often during the campaign, I would knock on someone's door and tell them all the things that I was hoping to do for the community, and they'd say, well, you know, everybody comes around election time and says these things, and then they're gone. Right, and I started campaigning in August and September, so I think that built up a little more credibility, especially when I come back to people's houses 2-3 times. But I think it's incumbent on us to continue organizing in the off season. You know, to organize when there's not an election around, to show up at someone's home and get them engaged in something in the community in a way that's that doesn't just sound like you're asking for their vote because it's an election. You know, to get people engaged in the process beyond elections so that they trust the process when election time comes around. I think that's a huge part of how it's done, and it takes disciplined organizing and hard work and shoe leather. But that's the phase that we're getting into now. And between November of 2012 and March of 2014, there isn't an election in Chicago. So that's time off for us to build in our community.
And I think there's other types of things that when I talk about making a culture of participation in the democratic process. One thing that I really loved before, you know, I had known that Will was intending to run for office. He was holding these events at local bars. Where, what was the name of the event that you did?
Oh Lord.
Corruption, the Chicago Way.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Something
right.
like that. And it was an opportunity at my local bar to have an alderman, Mick Dumke, a regular Joe, and Don Washington, so a couple different viewpoints, talk about the culture of corruption in Chicago and what it is and learn about it. And it was bringing political education to where the people are at. It wasn't just in the halls of our colleges. It was right here in the middle of our neighborhood. It was a conversation that we all ended up having, you know, weeks to come, and those sort of things that are socially engaging, that give people an authentic experience, and something that stays on their mind. And I think that was, you know, when he said he was going to run for office, it's like someone who out of nowhere, for just because he thinks it should exist, holds events so that people have the opportunity to have these conversations. Like, that is exactly the type of person I'd want representing me. I want as my neighbor, all of those things.
We'll see. We'll see where things are in a year or so when that process starts up again. For now, like I said, I'm more concerned about what's happening in the electoral offseason, what's happening to these issues that we were fighting for when our politicians aren't paying attention. How can we continue to keep these issues on their minds and on their radars even when they're not up for re-election for a couple of years? And that's what I'm trying to figure out what to do next.
Is there one thing that you wish you had done that you didn't do or you do better?
We were talking about this today. Gosh, I mean, I feel like it's arrogant to say no. I mean, we learned so much along the way. That every day knocking doors was learning. I wish I was as good at all this stuff as I ultimately am now at the very beginning. I think that would have gone a long way. But there's no teacher-like experience, and getting through this process and being guided by such amazing people. I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned a lot from them, and I think got better as a candidate, and the campaign got stronger as a result of it.
Yeah, I mean, all the when I think about this question, all I think of are just little tiny details. Like, what if I had done that one just a little bit different? But nothing that I felt. Anytime you decide that you're going to put energy into something else, like, oh, I wish I would have done that instead, meant I wasn't putting it in the thing I did put it in. And I think, it's just all these little details at the end of the day, it's hard to parse down.
Right.
And think,
and when you lose by 125 votes, it's easiest to sit back and think, oh, well, if I had only just done this one thing differently. But you make the decisions that you make and with the best information you have, and you hope that it turns out. And as I said at the very beginning, I'm damn proud of how it turned out, and grateful for all the decisions we made. So.
Yeah, and I just need to reiterate one more time, because Progressive Democrats, PDA Chicago, has always been at the front of all the campaigns I've ever worked on. And you guys, you being at the front of the line and validating us as progressives really help when we're going to those next steps of endorsements and when we're going to those front doors and, well, who's behind you already? It's important that you guys are always at the front of the line, and that you guys come out and you end up knocking on doors. You guys make a huge difference, and we really can't thank you enough. I mean,
I think it's really important that you guys were courageous and stepped out and supported this campaign when it was something that not a lot of people believed in. So that it meant a tremendous amount to us and was really a building block. So thank you guys so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.